to our webinar on 3 ways to unlock personal lines productivity in 2025. This is our first webinar of the new year. And your host for today is Jameson Frajo, who is the president and co-founder of Quandary. So Jameson, over to you.
Thank you, Tessa, and welcome everybody to Quandary's first webinar of 2025. We're talking today about a topic that is near and dear to the heart of Quandary and all of our customers, which is personal lines and effectiveness and efficiency within the function. So I will do a quick intro of myself. I'm Jameson, president and co-founder of Quandary. At Quandary, I really focus on what our product is, both today and what it's going to be tomorrow. So my days are spent understanding how our customers are using our product today, what they get benefits from, how it could be improved, and then also just understanding their business, their priorities, their strategies, and how Quandary can be a supportive partner in that process of driving efficiency and effectiveness directly in personal lines. So this is a topic near and dear to my heart. I am also joined today by two experts on this subject who I will let introduce themselves. So I'll pass it over to Kelly, to you first, to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Jameson. My name is Kelly Waters. I'm the industry solutions lead here at Quandary. I've been working in the insurance industry for over 25 years. The last 15 or so years of that has been on the brokerage side, specializing in operations. And here at Quandary, I support all of our teams with that experience that I bring from the insurance world.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate it. Yeah, and over to you, Karen.
Good afternoon, Jameson, Kelly. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Karen Nelson-Hofflin, the Director of Operational Performance at BrokerLink. This is my 46th year in this business, so long in the tooth when it comes to insurance. My experience covers, I think, direct writer, broker, owning a brokerage, managing a brokerage, and now my last hitch, if you will, is here at BrokerLink as Director of Operational Performance. So looking forward to the conversation today.
Thank you very much, Karen. We're going to, as the title implies, we're going to focus this webinar on 3 areas. Those areas are people, process, and technology. Really the 3 ways that, and 3 areas that you have leveraged to change operations within a brokerage. So we're going to start with people and teams, team structure to be specific. And I'm going to kick it over to you, Kelly, to just broach this subject and ask you, why is it critical to structure your team strategically in personal lines?
I believe that a well thought out structure aligns your team resources with your strategic goals. So it helps ensure that your team operates efficiently, you deliver on what you want to for your customer needs, and it also allows you to adapt to changes in the insurance industry.
Got it. So looking at personal lines, I'm sure you've seen effective ways to structure teams, less effective ways. From your perspective, what are some of the best ways for mid-size and larger brokers to structure their teams?
I think it's really a combination of models we've used in the past and bringing them together, combining them in a hybrid. So I think the core is our functional team piece, of course, so we have a sales department, service, and support. I think you add to that your client-centric focus. So really focusing your teams around your client segments. So you might have a VIP team that takes care of your high net worth clients and the specialty products that go with them. And then I guess what I would clump into a retail book to handle the rest of your client base. From there, you build teams that handle all aspects of that client journey. So they can be regional or they can be grouped based on that segment. But basically, you have a sales, service, and support mini team that work together to service that specific group that you've identified, whether it's regional, but they complement each other, and the client knows that, you know, this team is there to satisfy all of their needs.
Got it. Okay, I have some questions of digging into there, but first I'm going to kick it over to you, Karen, and just ask how you think about structuring teams in personal lines.
You know, I think the industry and the consumer really drive that decision today. And then you couple that to automation. If you look at the way our customer interacts today, whether it's retail shopping, banking, applying for a loan or a mortgage, buying a car, I think that really is where we define what we need to do as a business. And the consumer today is looking for a different approach depending on what they're purchasing. So it's very omni-channel. That's been a phrase we've used for quite some time now. We always typically use it from an internal perspective as a business. We want to be omni-channel. But what that really is saying is that our customers are omni-channel and we want to match pace with that. So whichever choice they make to interact with us, we want to be able to offer that. Well, in order to do that, you have to have a very strong foundation in how you're structured. So if it's a sales or a service, really it's that simple. We're either selling insurance or we're servicing it. And that servicing can be policy changes to billing, to claims, to renewals, cancellations, remarkets. It doesn't matter. That's the service component for that client. So when you clearly have that defined, I think then you start to branch yourself out and ask, but what streams of communication do we deploy to do that? And how can we match that structure to what our customer needs are and let the customer really drive that decision? So do they want a self-serve option, and what are they going to use that for? And have that structured so that you, again, the customer is really deciding that. I think in our old, been around a long time, and I think we've always, as brokerages, we've said, well, here's how we do business, Mr. Client, come and do business with us. And I think today it's really challenging us to be a lot bolder in how we look at that and change our perspective and turn around and go, well, if I'm the customer, how do I want to do business with you? And then structure yourself accordingly, and your team follows. What you end up with is a team that's very multifaceted, can multitask, it ends up being very skilled, and I think is in more of a consultative role versus an ask and deliver role.
Mm-hmm. So do you think about, and do you plan to structure teams around all of those specific ways that a client may interact with your brokerage, of having a team that is specific to one of those channels, or having teams that within them have the skill sets to work on any of those channels that a customer might come through?
That's a great question, Jameson. And I think the tendency would be to right away silo your team based on a stream of communication because you want that expertise there. But if you again go back now and you look at our workforce, and what does our workforce want to do as we look to the newer generations coming? What keeps them in a job? What inspires them to keep going and growing? And it is not that repetitive job and task of doing it over and over again. In fact, you could probably say bots are probably going to come in and replace some of that repetitive work. So how do you attract a workforce that is going to want to grow with you and stay with you, and so you have that better retention? And I think that's where you allow your staff to be multitasking. You train them in all the streams of communication, and then you let automation bring that request to them. So no matter whether it's a text or an email or a call or a live chat or a WhatsApp or whatever other platform you're on, you have a system that manages that traffic and just moves it along to whoever's first available. And now you've got that dexterity in your workforce that's able to handle that.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And it goes into a little bit where I'd like to head next. I'll put this to you, Kelly, I don't think either of you would say that there is one single one size fits all way to structure your team, and it depends on your brokerage, depends on your client, etc. But there's certainly, I'm sure, some what we would call anti-patterns is the word we use at Quandary of ways to certainly not structure your team. Kelly, what are some of the things you've seen of basically ineffective ways to structure your team, or ways you would not recommend people to do it?
I think most of all, stepping away from some of the more traditional models, working on an alpha split, for example, it makes it hard to balance workload or the PIF count or number of clients that someone is servicing. So it can really, unbalance workload or mismatch resources, those types of things. So I think that would be my number one.
I actually don't know what an alpha split is.
So alpha split is when you take clients by their last name and divide the clients accordingly for who will service them. Yeah.
Makes sense. Is that similar to how you would think of something to avoid, Karen? Would you agree?
Yeah, I think anytime you build hard boundaries around a structure or a process, that by virtue of that, you've already limited yourself to how agile you can be, where the market changes or automation changes, tools change. It just makes it that much more difficult, I think, to be agile and pivot, to be able to match pace with that. And so I think you want to structure yourself in a way today, and certainly in the past that made sense because everything was pretty stable. Technology didn't change unless it was a 10-year pattern, and now we're seeing it in a 10-minute pattern almost with AI. So I think that's sort of driving the decision on what structure works best. And I think today, whether it's a team of people that handle something or overall everybody is skilled, I think at any point you want to make sure that you're able to pivot and be agile when you need to be in very quickly.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've noticed is that in different brokerages that we've worked with, there's a model where there isn't kind of specialization within teams, and that sometimes there'll be frontline brokers that do a little bit of everything. So they might be selling new business, servicing claims, etc. Or there's a model where that's split out into different teams. It seems like from what Karen, about how you thought about it, that you actually think a model where you have a team that might be doing different things day in and day out is more optimal. Is that right when you look at it across new business, servicing, claims, as well as the different channels that might come through, or how do you think about that?
I think sales and service are very distinct and unique in our world, and typically you find people who are in sales like to do sales and not service. Right. People who are in service like to do service and not sales, and so there may be a time and a place where those two skill sets can be used within the same person. But I think to be very successful, having a sales department where you can drive that growth and drive that sort of that customer acquisition piece is much easier when you have a sales department rather than trying to do that embedded into a service environment as well. So I think it allows you the ability to grow quickly, to grow with purpose, and have some, great campaigns and marketing behind that, while being supported by a very strong service team that's going to just complement what was happening at the front end. Claims is a little bit of a different animal as well. And I think that depending on your size, there's probably a good argument to have a team that is dedicated to again, that customer experience. And claims is really the only time we see value in the money that we're spending when we purchase insurance. So you want to, I think, again, augment the experience that a carrier is going to provide for them as a broker, and really establish our role as brokers in the life cycle of a client as they stay with us.
Makes sense. So you think of it as where there is omni-channel for how a customer might be reaching you, but specialization in the category of requests that might be coming through, be it sales, be it servicing. Makes sense. So where I would go with that is if you each have this model that you think for a brokerage is the right fit, but you aren't there today. Change management is one of the hardest things to do. And Kelly, I'll go to you first. Of actually making this change across a brokerage, of restructuring your personal lines division to a model that you think is best, what do you think are good strategies to make sure that that is successful?
Okay, I will get us started, but I think Karen can really add value here. But I think to me, there's a couple of first steps that we need to look at. So really investing time to understand what's not working and what you're trying to achieve. So clarifying those goals of this change are going to be important. Really involving stakeholders at the appropriate levels. Sometimes that's all levels for everything. Sometimes it's filtered through. But I think that those two pieces really drive the importance of getting started.
Makes sense. And context for the attendees here is that we know Karen is about to go through a restructure, and so this is well timed. Karen, what do you think are ways to succeed when doing so?
Well, I think that at its very core, the change starts at the top. And if you have good leadership that has a clear vision of where they want to go and how they want to get there, I think you've got you're well on your way. Clear vision and a mission statement, I think, with strength around the goals that you're hoping to achieve, what the success factors are of where you want to be. And then I think really establishing some good guiding principles that are going to move with you as you go through that project, and change management starts at the very beginning, and you just continue to weave that and carry that through as you work through that project. A strong working group that has representation from every portion of the business that's going to be impacted is, I think, critical to make sure that those viewpoints and perspectives are heard. Integrate and include people, even if they're on the outside of the project, but make them a part of that project so that they see it, they hear it, they become your advocates, they become the voice out there that believes that what the direction you're heading is the right direction. And then just carry on and make sure that story is told at every turn. A good story really is what resonates with people and helps them manage through the evolution as you introduce the change to them.
Yeah, got it. Makes a lot of sense. Okay, thank you both. So I'm going to jump over to our next category here, which is process. I'm going to start with one of the hard parts about process is that it's one thing to have workflows and have processes in place. It's a very different thing to make sure that those processes are followed and utilized to achieve the goal. How and what do you think are good strategies to make sure that processes that are rolled out are actually utilized and achieve the end goal they were rolled out for? Kelly, I'll start with you again.
Again, I think it comes down to involving the team from the get-go and getting their input along the way. I think it's discussing it regularly, back to that communication to talk about the whys, but also to talk about the why nots. And I think it's important to create a feedback loop for, people to really understand, a place to have their questions and get them answered and understand what the answers mean.
Mm-hmm. Kind of an understanding the why and not just rolling it out, but having the people utilizing it involved in determining why and the importance of it, and then keeping them in the loop throughout it.
Yeah, keep it front of mind. I always say don't implement and forget, right? Don't just mechanically go through the steps of implementing something and then assume that it's working well and that people are happy with it and there's no more changes to make.
Makes sense. How does that mirror your thinking, Karen?
I think it's pretty accurate. I often say if you want to find workflows that aren't working, you look for the ones where people have found a workaround, and that's typically a good place to start. But the workflow and the flow of work are not the same, and we often build workflows without taking into account the flow of work on the desks of the people doing the job. And I think you need to have a good mechanism around testing that, getting feedback. Does this match the flow of work? Is this complementing what you're doing, or are there friction points in this workflow to the flow of work on your desk? Those friction points, I think, are highlight for you where your workflow may be missing something or burdening the business or the people too much with wanting something out of that. And I think that's where you gain those insights. And when you can match your workflow and your flow of work, and it actually complements each other, and it makes the work achievable and easy, and people aren't finding ways to work around it, or just not adopting it at all because it feels clunky, then I think you've got a solid workflow that you've been built. And that really is what dictates adoption, because it's just that easy. People can see that. I think then it comes down to how you launch it, how you introduce it to people, how you teach it. And I think, to Kelly's point, the story you tell behind that, not just the why, but what's in this for me. So I'm going to do this. What am I going to get out of it? And then the third component is what's in it for the customer at the end of the day, if we did this. And when you put all of that together and that resonates with the people doing the work, then I think you have a good shot at having a good adoption rate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, in both that question and about managing team change, it from both of your answers, it really comes down to communication of not just what's changing, but why it's changing, how it impacts individuals and the end customer as well, of really enabling people and giving them the opportunity to buy into it and not just need to adopt it because they're told to do so.
That's it.
So, Karen, you bring up the concept of workflow and flow of work. An interesting balance between the two of those. Something that is, I think, really important when thinking of process is what to put process around and what not to put process around. And there's an important balance between those two things. And I think the flow of work would contribute to that thinking quite a bit. How do you think about what should be left alone and not put into a process, and what should be?
It's a great question, and I think it's a great comment around when we build process around everything, we take away the empowerment and the creativity of the people that need to work with our customers every day. And our customers are not predictable. They don't ask for the same thing the same way. They don't require the same thing in the same way. And so when we try to build process around, a service that is not repetitive and not, I think, predictable, we start to end up with a workforce that can't think beyond what we've built. So the creativity, that strategic thinking, that solution-based thought process, we take that away. And so we have to be very, I think, cognizant of what requires process, because it's a continuity of the flow of work on their desk, and it's got a certain amount of predictability to it where they can do that. And I think it is a wants and needs conversation. Do we want it to be this way, or do we need it to be this way? And I think that's where you get that balance of saying what is actually required, what do we actually need, versus how can we build that into that flow of work and allow our staff to feel empowered to be able to make a decision inside of that best delivers that experience for the customer.
Yeah, really good answer. And Kelly, I'll ask you, with that in mind, what are some areas you think inside the brokerage that are good to have process around? And what are some things that are better left without too much process, so that brokers can be enabled to be creative and empowered on their own?
Yeah, I think that some areas that, need process are Making sure we collect data, we're following regulations, we're collecting the underwriting details, the information that's needed to secure the insurance contract. I think those are areas that need process, because there could be, certain things like we have to submit it to the carrier within a certain amount of time, or I have to make sure that I get certain things and that what I do is documented for us and for the client. So I think those are some areas that we need process around. I think that where we can lean away from it is in the solutions, right? So if we teach our workforce what they need to know in their technical and their product knowledge, and give them the tools that they need to do their job effectively, I think that coming in with that expertise, learning what the client's needs really are, and then customizing a solution is where you lean out of having a standard process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think as a consumer myself, in that an area where process is not as attractive as if I'm on the phone with my broker, and the feeling I get is that I'm just being walked through a checklist and that they don't actually care about my specific needs.
Mhm.
So I think there's a good balance to have between the two of them. Okay, we're getting close to our Q&A, and so I'm going to move us on to our third category here, technology, which I'll probably jump in a little bit more on myself. But first, I'll go to both of you. I'm gonna start zoomed out here. Looking at 2025, what are you looking at in terms of technology and trends that you really think are going to impact the personal line side of the of businesses in brokerages? And Karen, I'll go to you first.
It's a great question. I think we get pretty, our cup gets pretty full these days with AI and all the possibilities of what comes with that. And that can sometimes make the future look a little unclear and blurry, because you're just not sure where AI can be an assistance to you. I think when we look at what we do every day, it's an opportunity for us to really recognize those constant, repetitive, predictable processes that we do quite mechanically as humans today. And in a lot of cases, they're probably not our favorite things to do. So as a workforce, when we look forward, how can we remove that repetitive, predictable process using the tools and automation that are coming at us pretty quickly, and bots and things like that, that then allow us to focus on the upskilling of our staff and the reskilling of other staff that might have been doing that role to become, I think, more embedded in a career of insurance and really get into that consultative role. So I think technology plays a significant part in all of our tools, phone, computer, and inside of our processes. So for us, it's about looking at all of that and saying, where can we maximize automation and maximize our staff and the skills that they have at the same time?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And Kelly, I'll put that to you, but also just add the context of knowing the market conditions we're in today, with both extreme weather events, premiums rising, talent being hard to acquire, train, and keep. How do you think technology can be utilized with those problems that exist in the market today?
I think that data analytics comes into play, predictive modeling. I think that more and more the broker channel needs to understand all of the data that we have, and be able to use it to our advantage to, select the customers that we work with, select the markets that we work with, know what coverage we should be recommending to a client based on their, geographic location, those types of things. I think being aware too of the well-being of our staff and what can we do. So, are we introducing technology just to introduce it, or is it really going to help our team alleviate some of those repetitive tasks and really let them do what they need to do and do it the best way they can? That upskilling piece that Karen talked about, making room for those types of things helps the well-being of the teams overall. So I think those are the areas that come to the top of my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think on my perspective here is that there's some really large macro trends at play that are increasing the workload at brokerages. We've seen more work get pushed onto the brokerage from carriers, but there's also a hard market and there's more cat events happening. Over time, there's just more work for the brokerage, while at the same time, there's less staff or harder to keep staff or train staff or attract new staff. And that's really where my perspective comes in on technology within brokerages is I mean, pretty simply summed up as do more with less, of enabling and really being a rising tide for all staff within the brokerage, so that technology can enable brokers and enable members within the brokerage to do what they need to do of advise and serve clients more effectively and at a higher level of leverage, really, while technology handles a lot of the kind of base work and work that people shouldn't and don't need to do. Kelly, you touched on a really important thing that I think is more important today than almost any day with AI, which is knowing what to adopt and what not to adopt, and not falling into a quote unquote shiny object syndrome. Because a lot of stuff looks fun and it looks interesting. It looks like it can change your brokerage. How should people think about what to adopt and what not to adopt? Kelly, I'll go to you first.
For me, it's really about going back to what are your goals? What's, if we're talking about a certain process like new business or renewals, what are you trying to achieve? And looking for the tools that will help you do that, rather than just looking for the ones that make you go, oh, that looks, cool, or will help me, or that sort of thing. So looking for tools that are going to help you achieve the goals that you want to achieve, I think helps you to stay away from that syndrome.
Yeah, good answer. Karen, do you think about that similarly?
I think you, as a business, you would first look to your strategic objectives. What is it that, strategically as a company you're looking to do in your future? And then you look at the tools available, the AI available, and I think it becomes a return on investment. Is that feeding your strategic objectives? Is it going to help you get to where you want to go? Or again, is it just one of those really cool things that when you turn it on, it looks good and it returns returns a result for you? I think secondary to that is we have a lot of data, and we don't necessarily always have the skill in brokerages to understand what that data is telling us, what the story is behind that data, and then be strategic about what you're going to do with that going forward. So I think it's a decision that is probably not made quickly, and needs to be pretty informed.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think the thought process of looking at your strategic objectives as a business, your goals, and matching technology as an enabler of those strategic objectives is exactly the right way to think about it, as opposed to the opposite, which is, oh, look at this amazing technology. What could we do at our brokerage with this? Or how can we change our brokerage with this? Is really grounding yourself in reality, grounding yourself in what your objectives are to improve your business, grow your business, is exactly the way to ensure you actually get ROI on those investments, and it's not just another cool toy. Okay. Well, we are gonna probably go to one more question here, but we're coming up to around our Q&A time. So anybody out there that wants to or has some questions for anybody within the panelists group here, just please put them into the chat, and we'll take some time to answer those questions. Where I'm gonna go here is, Karen, you brought up AI specifically. What areas of the business or specific problems do you think that AI is going to change within brokerages?
Well, I think from a communications perspective and how customers come to you, I think there's a real great use case for using AI to help maneuver that traffic and streamline it, make it a lot more painless for the customer, seamless for your brokers to be able to manage and manage the workflow, the workload, and keep it. So I think there's a really great use case for AI there. I think AI from a analytics, business insights perspective is another great place where AI can really, I think, provide information for you as a broker to make good decisions, to highlight areas of maybe looking at and reviewing. If you talk about workflows and workload, AI, I think is a great tool to be able to point you in the direction you need to go. Just as a couple of, and then of course you've got the robotic side where you get that repetitive and intuitive piece to it as well, which I think would help. But those are two that I think are pretty impactful.
Yeah, both. I think both important areas. I think communications is really something that has changed in the last couple of years as well, where technology's ability to, say, draft a response to a client to speed up brokers has really changed in the last couple of years and is an exciting direction technology can go. We should jump into our QA here because there's now quite a few questions coming in. So Kelly, I will hold on yours, but I'm going to go to QA. One of the questions here is, what can Quandary do to help agencies? And so I'm just going to answer that one first. I'm going to pull up my screen here and just explain Quandary a bit. Just to answer that of who is Quandary and what do we do? So Quandary is an AI-powered renewal intelligence platform. So we provide products within the space of the renewal in personal lines to save time for brokers and agencies, save time for the brokers themselves, and enable them to do a more effective and thorough job on the renewal without needing to put time into every single client. So we have two products in Canada. One is Renewal Reviews, which does a AI-powered renewal review of every renewal and puts that information in front of brokers' workflow directly in their directly in Epic. And the second, which we just launched more recently, is the automation of the requoting process. So with every renewal, the ability to take that information, quote it, and take that information and show it within the broker's workflow directly. So our vision is to enable brokers to treat every client like a VIP by having technology do the heavy lifting of information grabbing and put that in front of brokers so that they can do the best job possible. We want to take the renewal platform and the renewal process and make it data-driven, automated, and intelligent so that brokers can be freed up to do what they do best, interact with clients and make intelligent decisions. We'll have this up here, and you can always reach out to us after this by reaching out directly or taking this QR code.
We're actually at time, so I think the rest of the questions we're going to follow up via email. So if we didn't have time to get to your questions today, we will send you an email. We know everyone on this call is very busy, but want to just thank you both, Karen and Kelly, for joining our conversation today. I know everyone attending learned a lot from you. And really, hopefully we'll have some engaging discussions within their own brokerages and agencies coming off of this. Thank you both so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Karen.